My friend Jake is an EDM artist. And for the unacquainted, that's electronic dance music. And I don't listen to much EDM personally, but it is a huge subculture with fans all over the world, numbering in the millions. And I met Jake when he was an insecure, awkward freshman in high school. I was a youth pastor and he was a student in our ministry. It's wild to see him now touring the world, playing sellout shows in front of thousands, deafening high energy music, synchronized laser lights cutting through smoke machine fog, and the masses in a frenzy. And sadly, Jake walked away from his faith in college, but from time to time, when he's in town, he still goes to church with his family. And recently, they visited a church in our city that gathers in a local music venue. It's a good church led by great men and women who love Jesus. But after the service, Jake texted me with some questions. Specifically, he was curious as to why the experience, at least in his estimation, seemed to try so hard to look, sound, and feel so much like the shows he plays on a regular basis. He texted me, "I didn't feel cool enough to be there. I don't think church should be like that." Honestly, I was shocked. Jake is exactly the sort of person so many of us as church leaders and pastors are desperate to reach. He's a young millennial bordering on Gen Z, somewhat skeptical of Christianity and religion as a whole, but still desperate for hope and meaning and purpose. And so, in our desire to reach people like Jake, many churches have gone down the path of relevance, believing that if our churches could look, sound, and feel a little bit more like everything else out there in culture that seems so captivating, that we'd then be more effective in our mission to reach emerging generations and all generations. And the intentions are great, but the results have not been. What I've discovered in recent years, not just with Jake, but from conversations with so many people of all ages, is that when people set foot in a church, they're not necessarily looking to have an experience that looks, sounds, and feels like everything else. They're not looking for relevance. Most people aren't worried about a church being cool or hip or digitally savvy enough. In fact, in some ways, people find that sort of red-hot pursuit of relevance off-putting. What Jake and others, particularly those who are far from God, are seeking is transcendence, something other, something different, what Christians would call something holy. But in the digital age, we find ourselves immersed and enmeshed in the technologies of our day and their incessant allure, always pulling and tugging at us to keep up with the times, to not get left behind. There is an inherent fear baked into the idea of being too slow on anything. In a culture as fast-moving and progress-oriented as ours, falling behind is akin to falling off a cliff, a descent into irrelevance. And as such, there are some who worry that if the church doesn't lean into and leverage new technologies assertively and aggressively, with immediacy and urgency, that the church will be rendered ineffective in her mission, mired in irrelevance. And conversely, the assumption is that if the church can embrace new technologies quickly, our effectiveness will increase. But we have evidence to the contrary. The church has already embraced many of the new technologies of the digital age en masse. According to Lifeway research, by April of 2020, 97% of churches in America had online services up and running. And according to Barna research, by the summer of 2020, just a few months into the pandemic, half of all millennials who regularly attended church in person before COVID had stopped attending online completely. As the church has rushed headlong into the new technologies at our disposal, the results have been mixed at best and disastrous at worst. Overall, church engagement has declined. Congregations fracturing over online content has increased, and the public witness of the church has suffered. Now, you might be saying, well, okay, but aren't you being a bit alarmist here? Isn't digital just the medium, not the message? The 20th century philosopher and social commentator Marshall McLuhan once famously said, "The medium is the message." In other words, how we communicate something in many ways becomes the thing we communicate. The digital age and its technologies have added plenty of convenience and comfort to our lives. And I want to be clear, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not anti-technology, far from it. What we're going to explore in these sessions is not about the evils of technology. It's really not about technology at all. It's about humans. It's about you and me and our use or misuse or even abuse of technology, and in particular, the potential formational impact that carelessly or thoughtlessly leveraging technology within the church might have on the congregations and communities we're called to love and serve. Here's a part of what I mean. The digital age is built on three key values: speed, choice, and individualism. In the digital age, we have access to what we want as quickly as our fingers can type and scroll. This is speed. And we are inundated with an endless array of choices, options that seem to continue on in an infinite loop. And this is choice. And our digital experiences, whether we know it or not, are highly customized and curated to suit our preferences and personalities. This is individualism. In his book, The Tech-Wise Family, Andy Crouch defines digital technology as an easy everywhere medium. That's not hard to understand. It's easy to access and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Crouch continues by saying that technology is a brilliant expression of human capacity, but anything that offers easy everywhere does nothing to actually form human capacities. Another writer, Cal Newport, gives this sobering warning. He says that when we spend significant time in what he calls a state of frenetic shallowness, we permanently reduce our capacity to perform deep work. This is about the plasticity of our brains, which is sort of a fancy way of saying that our brains are malleable. The more time we spend frantically moving about the increasing speed, endless choices, and hyper-individualism of the easy everywhere reality of our always buzzing, always on digital technologies, our brains will rewire to crave more and more of the same, which in turn forms us into deeply impatient, shallow, and isolated people. This isn't the sort of life we want. And it's not the sort of life we want for the congregations we love and serve. The church is not immune to this. When we think back to previous technological advances and the influence these technologies had on the church, this becomes abundantly clear. In the 15th century, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, intellect and the life of the mind began rising to prominence as literacy began to increase and books were placed in the hands of the masses. And this had a profound impact on the church. The print age reshaped the worshiping life of the gathered church around scripture and sermons. This led to the addition of more seating areas in church sanctuaries because people were required to sit for longer periods of time. And I'm not saying that this shift was bad. I'm simply making the point that technologies change and impact our ecclesiology in practical ways. We fast forward to the mid-20th century as television sets began dominating American homes. This gave rise to what many call the broadcast age, as 30 and 60-minute television shows began filling the airwaves. We began to see similar segmentation methods make their way into the worshiping life of the church. An opening 15-minute segment of songs, a 5-minute segment of announcements, similar to commercials on TV, and on and on. It's right around this time that we also began to see sanctuaries turn into worship centers, with seating and lighting and sound designed more for viewing audiences than participating congregants. And if the print age and the broadcast age both had such sweeping effects on the church, we would either be foolish or in denial to think that the digital age isn't affecting us in similar ways. And if the digital age is built on the values of speed, choice, and individualism, we have to begin asking the question, as pastors and church leaders, is this the way we want our people to be formed? I believe that the church has always been most effective when she invites people into, again, transcendent spaces. The church has always been most effective when she zigs as the world is zagging. And in the digital age, the way to zig as the world zags is to gather as the world scatters, to slow down as the world speeds up, and to deeply commune while the rest of the world simply spends time critiquing one another. But this is slow work, can't be microwaved. Jesus in John 15, 5-8 says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. This is the language of agriculture. This is about gardening, not microwaving. It's slow and steady work over the long haul. Several years ago, Jenny and I took an anniversary trip to a sleepy little town on the coast of California called Mendocino. I had booked us a room at a beautiful bed and breakfast that overlooks the Pacific Ocean. Now, I was just coming off an intensely busy week of ministry, and when we arrived, I still had a few things I needed to finish up. So the first thing I asked in the lobby was, of course, what's the Wi-Fi password? And the lady gave me a warm smile and said kindly and gently, there's no Wi-Fi here. In fact, you won't have much phone reception either, but we've got some board games in the room if you'd like. Now, I began feeling withdrawal symptoms right away. How was I going to make it for the next several days with no internet? Jenny and I eventually got to our room, we set down our bags, and we stepped out onto this small balcony overlooking the ocean. And the view was just breathtaking. Nothing but blue for as far as our eyes could see. And we sat there in stunned silence for a little while, and then we settled into conversation. No internet, no phones or laptops, no social media, just our presence and our words and our attention and the endless sea. Now, here's the thing. I don't have a photo of it on Instagram that I could show you. It lives in the recesses of my heart and mind. It's a treasure in my memory, and it's a treasure that I wouldn't trade for all of the glossy, filtered Instagram photos you could ever offer me. This is our calling as pastors and church leaders today, to help our people lift their collective gaze away from the abyss of their digital devices and to see Jesus out on the water, inviting us all to step out in faith toward a slow and steady life with Him.